What is Emu? A question that has plagued the One Piece community since the King of the World made their debut, and we've never really gotten a sufficient answer for. Oda has successfully hidden basically everything about this character, from their looks to their gender to their devil fruit ability, and only teased us with the barest crumbs he possibly could have, much to all of our annoyance, about what this character actually is and what they represent. But thanks to one of the latest chapter releases, we're now finally starting to get a very good idea of exactly what Emu's powers might be. And it's shaping up to be one of the worst villains in all of One Piece. Which isn't really surprising, because whether you are on board the element of Emu or Blackbeard being the final villain, it's going to be one of the two, and both represent very important aspects for Luffy to fight against. And the two share more in common than you would think, but we'll get into that a little bit later. The easiest way to explain this would be to look at the abilities that we know for a fact Emu has, because we know that they possess shape-changing, which more than likely means that this is a mythical zone fruit, probably a god fruit, although maybe not, because by the end of this fury, it might very well be the opposite fruit of a god fruit. But in addition to shape-changing, we are well aware that the King of the World also possesses the ability to bestow power onto others. A rather unique ability for devil fruit. There are some abilities like this, but it's not common at all, especially not in the way that Emu seems to be able to wield it. In particular, we know that this power has been bestowed onto the Gorosei as the primary, but then also there seems to be indications this power is bestowed onto the Celestial Knights as well. And then the last element of Emu's power, though never directly confirmed as of yet to come from them, is teleportation, in regards to specifically the sigils on the ground that summon the Celestial Knights or the Gorosei. This is very unique for One Piece, and while it's never been confirmed, we've often speculated that it did in fact come from Emu. But it was within the last chapter that not only does this seem to point to Emu, it actually seems to reveal exactly what their devil fruit might be. Because during the process of chapter 1140, Shamrock has begun his plan to take over the island of Elbaf, and in doing so summons two more Celestial Knights to help. In regards, one of the knights actually is Killingham, and what's interesting is that when this Celestial Knight is being summoned, they refer to the fact that they are being pulled through an abyss, asking where it is and where they are going. And in the process of asking about the abyss, they also remark that once they're on Elbaf, they can't take the giant children with them back through the same process, stating specifically that nobody without the mark can travel through the abyss. This is interesting because it means that all of the celestial dragons, at least in regards to the knights and the Gorosei, have this sigil upon them. This mark is presumably the same as the star pattern that we see imprinted on the ground whenever they're summoned, and that also would seem to tie back into Emu, because it seems highly likely that Emu possesses a actual devil fruit. And there's a lot of theming to tie into this, specifically around the Gorosei and the Celestial Knights. For one thing, most of the Gorosei seem to be very demonic looking creatures. You know, I know they're mythical zones, but very demonic looking ones. Some even altered from what they're supposed to look like. And this connection just shot way up with the reveal that Shamrock's fruit is embedded in his sword and is actually a model Cerberus, which of course is the guardian of the underworld. And this ties into the idea of the abyss, because the abyss is not a very common reference in most mythology. As a matter of fact, it only appears in two locations. One is in very early references in the Bible, in which a abyss is referenced as a punishment for leviathans, very old and ancient creatures that God didn't want on earth anymore. And then the second, and by far and away more commonly known, is the Greek version, in which Tartarus is actually called an abyss, and it is the prison used for the Titans after the Greek god Titan War. This would very much seem to have tie-ins to a lot of One Piece, as we see references to both of these all over the place. We have the Jewel Tree Adam, the Sun Tree Eve for biblical references, and then we go on to have various references like the ancient weapons that all have the names of Greek and Roman gods. And if we look at the bare minimum outline of what Emu turns into during his confrontation with Sabo, we can clearly see that it has some kind of wing structure and a pointed tail. This is a very obligatory reference in many older variations of what demons used to look like. They would have said pointed tail, horns, and wings. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go ask your parents to go pull out The Devil Went Down to Georgia case cover. It looks exactly like that. And in many ways, this has been set up for a while, because demons and devils are often associated with darkness and an abyss. We're obviously really seeing that tied in now. And that has been a prevailing theme throughout all of One Piece, in particular with Blackbeard. This is especially noticeable once Blackbeard's fight with Ace has been taken into account, because that fight is even said by Blackbeard himself to be the sun versus the darkness. That is a commonly occurring theme in One Piece in general, but was surmised completely in that fight, and is, well, frankly, the fight of Nika versus whatever Emu's fruit is anyway. As there is this constant reoccurring theme that darkness is prevailing and Nika is supposed to be the light that emerges that gets rid of it. That's the idea. But considering this wide variety of powers that Emu's fruit seems to have, does that mean that there's more potential powers for Luffy's fruit? Does Nika have some similar types of abilities to these, or are these fruits opposite for a reason? Guess we'll only find out more with time, but it is interesting to speculate that Luffy does probably have at least one more gear, and Gear 6 could very well tap into some of the abilities that we're talking about here. And as such, I will leave you with one final question. What the hell is Saint Killingham? He's not a human, he's not a dragon, I don't know what that is. Leave your comments below.